I have risen. I have come back. I am the second coming of Blue Guy. I have come. Guess who's back? Back again. Blue Guy's back. Because today I'm here to find the best boss fights in gaming. Or more specifically in all the games I've played. You know, this is my tier list, so obviously it's gonna be biased towards the games I like. There are not gonna be any FromSoft games on this list, okay? So if you're like a hardcore stan or something, it's better if you just leave, okay? To help you understand why I rank each boss fight where they are, I have made a list of categories. Number 1, moveset. Number 2, narrative. Number 3, phases. Number 4, cinematics, QTEs. Number 5, music. Number 6, uniqueness. I'll explain that one a bit more later. 7, difficulty. 8, length. And number 9 is the reward. So now I'll list a game for each category that I think fits it really well, and then we'll figure out which boss fight is the best across the board, so which boss fight has the best stats, and yeah, then we'll know which boss fight is the best.
Das ist natürlich immer so die Frage. Ich sage natürlich immer, woran hat sie lehen? Da fragt man sich nachher natürlich immer, woran sie lehen hat. Woran hat sie lehen?
I picked out some of my favorite boss fights, and I'm gonna rename the tiers into the categories I just told you. So yeah, okay, now I'm ready. Here's the full list of all the categories I have. I have added a lot of boss fights that I like. Those are like my top 15 boss fights that I could think of off the top of my head, and explain why they are in their spots with each of these categories right here. Obviously, I have played a lot of games, but not every game. I have like 1,000 games in Steam, which I've played probably like 50% of those. I've played a couple of games on my PlayStation, maybe like 50 or 60. I've played a lot of Switch games, probably 150, 200 maybe. So, and a bunch of Wii games and old stuff, but overall I've played probably a total of maybe 2,000 games, which is fucking... that is a lot, okay? I'm not trying to flex or anything with that. That's a stupid flex, by the way. But obviously there are like millions of games out there, so I've basically just scratched the surface of everything. So excuse me if your favorite boss fight is not on this list, but it's my list. So yeah, tell me in the comments what your favorite boss fights are, and if I have any of your favorites on my list right here. That will be interesting to know. We're gonna start off with the moveset, and I mean, there are a lot of bosses here where I like the moveset a lot, but I think Xehanort is a contender for this, and Ganon, because they both have like awesome movesets. They change a lot and keep the fight fresh every time, and I really like the movesets. Obviously Ganon has the flurry rush dodge. That is crazy. That is like the reason why I would put him in here. Xehanort has a lot of other great qualities, but I think his strongest might be the moveset or the phases, because he has a lot of phases, and they're both kind of similar, moveset and phases. They overlap each other a bit, but yeah, for now I'll leave both of these here. Narrative, well, probably Imlerith. I would put him in here because it was so satisfying to just fucking beat him up. It was great, and I can still remember that boss fight. Witcher 3 doesn't really have many awesome boss fights. That's not why I play the game. It's more about the immersion and the RPG stuff you do. Obviously the monster fights are cool, but well, what can I say? Witcher 3 is not a boss oriented game, let's just say that. But Imlerith sticks out, and I think he is a really good boss fight. Oh, the Pope from Assassin's Creed 2, yes. I think this category is perfect for the Pope. Maybe uniqueness as well, because crazy shit going on, but I swear, the whole game, you're playing as Ezio, you're living his life basically in this game, from like his teen years into his adulthood, and seeing this boss fight, fighting this bitch and getting revenge for your family, dude. I think Assassin's Creed 2 has the best story of any Assassin's Creed game, to be honest, and this boss fight is a big part of that. As a kid, when I played this the first time, it blew my mind. I was like, what the fuck is going on here? It was like in the first game as well. I played the first one. The last boss fight was totally crazy. This game again, I think it deserves to be here. Narrative, another one with narrative, but I'm not sure. I have Odin from Final Fantasy 16 because he has a really good boss fight that's placed really well within the story, and I think that's like the strong part of this fight, because it's like the clash of ideals. You have Clive, and then you have Barnabas, and it's basically not a fight between icons like in the other boss battles. This fight is most of the time just a one-on-one between them, and it really was just so satisfying because you try to fight him for like the last part of the story. You beat Bahamut and you're like, okay, where is he? Where's Odin? Let's go beat his ass, because the Bahamut fight was so crazy. You thought you could destroy everybody basically, and then you get to Odin, you're like, oh shit, let's go. You get humbled real quick, and then the next time you meet him, you go there, oh shit, nope, humbled again. And I think it was the third or fourth time you finally get to fight him, and that fight, the music, the level, the boss fight itself, everything was so awesome. It might be recency bias because I just finished the game like 2 weeks ago, but I really love that boss fight. And I unironically think that Final Fantasy 16 has some of the best boss fights ever. That game is just crazy with the quality. Another one, I don't know guys, I don't know about you, but I think this guy, Kuze, his second fight, I only put the second fight on here because he has all three of those, or four. All of the Kuze fights are awesome, but I think the second one in the sewer, that one sticks out to me a lot. And it was like, just when shit hits the fan, you know, you're trying to escape through a sewer, you're all beat up and bloody and like almost dead basically, and then Kuze comes there with a fucking, on his bike with a fucking pipe in his hand, and he's just there to beat your ass because you beat him up last time and he lost his finger. So he's so furious and so fueled by rage in that fight. It was so good. Every scene with Kuze is so good. And that second boss fight is really my favorite. Alright, so now I have another boss fight, but I don't know if this is the place to put it. But let's at least mention it. It's Xion from Kingdom Hearts Days. And I know 95% of you are sitting there like, what is this guy talking about? Is that even a real game? Did he just make that up? Bro, please, listen to me, okay? Please. I've played this game when I was like 8 or 9 years, I think 9. And it was the first game that made me fucking cry. And it's all because of this boss fight, all because of the story in this game. It's so emotional and awesome. And I cry like a little bitch every time. But that's just because it's so good. And everybody who hasn't played this game, go and play it, please. Please, it's really good. But the boss fight has many other good qualities, that's why I'm not gonna put it here. I'm going to put it in phases, because this boss fight is basically all about phases. You go, for any of you who know what Kingdom Hearts is about. You go through a lot of different Disney worlds and Square Enix worlds, and yeah, in this game basically you travel to 7 or 8 different worlds and complete missions there, and you know, each world has its own little story. But in the end, with the last boss fight, you travel back in time. You go through each level that you finished in this game and you fight Shion in it. And I thought it was so cool. You like revisiting all the places you've gone before in this game and all the places you've made memories with Shion, and that just added another layer, and every phase has its own unique style to it for every world. It was a very long and tough boss fight, but the phases just made it fresh and awesome. I know I'm gonna get some shit for this, but I have Bahamut here too. Alright, Bahamut is also from Final Fantasy 16. He could be in phases, but I don't think phases is the right place for him. I'm gonna put him in cinematics because the QTEs and the cinematics in that fight were just awesome. They really did it in the perfect way with the cinematics. It's very difficult to do it. It's easy to fuck that point up. A lot of boss fights are boring because of QTEs and cutscenes, but here it uses the cinematics in a way that's so good. You can't achieve that in normal gameplay, so you have to use cinematics for some moments to create like a big epic moment. Final Fantasy 16 in general has a lot of those great QTEs and cinematics, and I swear that boss fight is so hype. I've never played anything as insane as that. Bahamut is really good. So, music. The last 2 categories I could put in many games, but here I think I have like a couple of them. For example, Cerberus from Devil May Cry 3. I know a lot of you guys love that fight, and I do too, mainly because of the music. Everybody was saying this is such a difficult fight and so hard, but it was pretty easy, but probably because I picked the wrong difficulty. But I still remember that boss fight because of the music and the music itself. I mean, just listen to it, bro. We Devil May Cry music in general is so good. Then I also have Giratina from Pokemon. Now I could have put basically any Pokemon boss fight in here because Pokemon music are just bangers, but that's really the only thing this boss fight has. Its atmosphere and its music, because you're going to hell and fight Satan in Pokemon. I don't really have to say much. I think many of you know this boss fight, and the music is just really good. Especially like the little heart monitor sound at the beginning. It sets the tone for the boss fight. So yeah, next up is the unique factor. And it's hard to explain what I mean by this, but if a boss fight is unique and makes it stand out, like a certain mechanic or something, I think that improves the boss fight as a whole. And one boss fight everybody loves and everybody talks about how unique it is the Mr. Freeze fight from Arkham City. I'm sure you've played this one, and I'm sure you like this one probably because it's so unique. Because you have to think of something new every time you hit them with something. Nothing ever works twice on him, so you have to think about it and look at your environment to beat him. Balancing, this is also a big factor. For example, in FromSoft games, you just hit and roll, and it takes 10 hours to beat a boss because you barely deal any damage and you get killed in one shot. That's a good example of how not to balance a game. I like it when the difficulty isn't dictated by numbers, so basically the boss fight one-shots you or you one-shot the boss. That's not good balancing. I think the gameplay should influence the difficulty. So your abilities that you gained up to the boss fight and the boss's moves and his phases, that is what should make the boss fight difficult and not the attack damage, you know. I think every Baldur fight in God of War 2018 is really well balanced. What the fuck is that? Balanced. So I'm gonna put him here. I think Virgil is also really well balanced, so I think he should probably go up there as well. Now one fight I'm gonna put in here that's not well balanced. Well, it is, but it's really fucking hard. But balancing is great in the sense that you play as Kiryu for 6 games or even more, depending on which games you've played, and you know how strong he is and how powerful. Basically, Kiryu is the strongest guy. Every time you go into fight, Kiryu is gonna come out fine somehow because he's just Kiryu. And in this game, you don't play as Kiryu, you play as Ichiban. So you have to fight him and prove that you're strong. So yeah, having to fight Kiryu was just awesome because he is just as strong as you expect him to be. And you're gonna get your ass kicked by this boss fight. And the best part is, you don't even beat him. It's like one of those JRPG moments. You beat the boss, but you lose in the cutscene, which in this case isn't even bad because Kiryu is just Kiryu. It would have been bad writing if you beat him, because Ichiban wouldn't have been close to him at this point of the story. So yeah, the last 2 points, I'm not sure which boss fights I'm gonna put in this. These points are like, yes, they're important, but I don't have any boss fights on this list that are like defined by these categories. But they are definitely important. You need some kind of reward, even if it's just the satisfaction of beating the boss, but the reward of the fight is obviously important. The length also, if the boss fight is too long, then it's just gonna get tedious. But yeah, the last 2 boss fights I have here are Tendo and Poseidon from God of War 3 and Like a Dragon. I mean, Tendo, for me, the music in that boss fight is just... And Poseidon, I guess this one goes in the cinematics QTE because everybody remembers this QTE, okay? It's the fucking greatest QTE in any game probably. But yeah, this is the list so far. These are the bosses I picked for the list, and now I'll have to rank them somehow, or now I'll have to find the best of them, which combines all of these categories and just, yeah, which boss fight is the best. I'd say the strongest contenders for me are Xion, because that boss fight does a lot of things really, really well. Xehanort, I like Ganon a lot. Kuze, I wanna pick like 3 or 4 finalists. So yeah, in my list for the best boss fights of all time, I will put Odin from Final Fantasy 16, Xion from Kingdom Hearts Days. It's tough. Kuze from Yakuza 0. These 3 boss fights are the finalists. Let's get over here and look at them closer and see which of them is the best. Okay, let's go. I'm gonna start off with Xion. So first of all, the moveset. I really enjoy the moveset. It's not that big and there are some repeating moves, but since the boss fight changes a lot and has many phases, there are also a ton of moves that Xion has and uses, which is why I would give it a 7 out of 10. In terms of narrative, it's a 10 out of 10. In terms of phases, it's also a 10 out of 10, because, yeah, as I explained before, the story and the phases are like the best parts of this fight, in my opinion. Cinematics, I mean, this boss fight doesn't really have QTEs, but the story cinematics are very emotional and add a lot to the fight, which is why in this category it's also a 7 out of 10. Obviously, the lack of QTEs make it impossible for it to get a 10 out of 10 in this category, since that is pretty much required. but story cinematics are very nice. Next up we have the music, and this is another 10 out of 10. I might be biased, but come on guys. It's Kingdom Hearts, Vector to the Heavens. It's one of the greatest gaming soundtracks ever. I love it. The uniqueness of the fight, and I like it a lot because it is very unique. There's no other boss fight in this game where you switch places in the middle of the boss fight. That doesn't happen. And there are so many moves. Every world that you switch into in the fight has a different feeling to it and different movesets, which makes it all very unique. So here it gets an 8 out of 10 because it's really very good. And for the balancing, Xion gets a 6 out of 10. Okay, I think this boss fight was a bit too tough, and it's a marathon basically. You have to fight like Xion like 5 times in different phases, and there is a lot going on, and it's a pain to die and restart the whole fight. So it gets a 6 out of 10 in the balancing department. Length is an 8 out of 10 because it's a pretty long fight, but it's kind of necessary for this one because it's like the big final boss fight, or not final boss fight, but I think for all intents and purposes this is the final boss of the game. Reward. Now this is the only category in all of the contenders which gets 0 because this boss fight is not rewarding at all. Okay, you don't get anything cool. Basically there is no reward. Okay, you're here fighting your friend, your best friend that you've spent the whole game with, and now you're here and fight her and you have to kill her basically. So where is the reward, please? This doesn't seem very rewarding to me. Basically the whole game is about your friendship with that character and you kill her. So where's the reward? That goes into a total of 66 points, which is pretty good. The next contender, Odin from Final Fantasy 16. And this fight really doesn't have any big flaws, I don't think. Yeah, there's nothing bad about this boss fight actually. So the moveset of Odin is pretty good, even though he has a couple of moves that repeat in every phase, and a lot of his moves are very easy to dodge. So yeah, he gets a 7 here. The narrative is a 10 out of 10 because obviously I placed him in the narrative category. That no, if he wasn't a 10 he wouldn't have been placed there. Phases of the boss fight are also very good. A bit, I don't know, every phase still retains some of the moves of the old phase, so even when you're in the final phase you still see some moves that you've seen at the beginning of the fight. So that's why it's like the phases aren't perfect, let's just say that. Phases are good and really interesting and cool, but it's not the best part of the fight. That's why for phases it gets an 8 because it's still really good. Cinematics, QTEs, this boss fight, because it's a Final Fantasy 16, it automatically has really good cinematics and QTEs. If you haven't played the game, every boss fight has good QTEs here. Every boss fight has great cinematics. That's why here it gets a 9 out of 10. Because I wish there was just a bit more Odin versus Ifrit in the cinematics. Music, my god, bro. Final Fantasy 16, Square Enix. I don't know who is your team for making music, who was cooking in the studio, but oh my god, I fucking love the music. It's a 10 because Odin has awesome music. Uniqueness, it's alright. It's a pretty unique boss fight in the game because every other icon fight is like big and very climactic and you're going all over the place, but here you stay in one place and you're 90% of the fight you're in your human form, fighting Barnabas in his human form. And only a tiny amount of the fight is actually Icon versus Icon. And that makes it stand out a lot in the game. And it gets a 7 out of 10 at this point. Balancing. Now this is actually a weak point, I would say, of this fight. Of any Final Fantasy 16 fight. Because the difficulty in this game is kind of shitty. You have 2 modes, story mode and adventure mode, I think. One is more action focused than the other, but there is no hard or easy difficulty. And the boss fights aren't hard because when you die, you revive, and the boss fight has like checkpoints at health marks. So if you beat a boss up and got a third of his health bar, you revive with full health, full potions, and fight against him with a third of his life missing. So basically you won't lose this fight. You can't really lose this fight and reload and redo the thing. You basically just keep going after you die. It's kind of weird what they thought of that, why they thought of that. If that wasn't there, the difficulty would be fine, but because of this, it makes the boss fight pretty easy. And yeah, so yeah, it's a 5 out of 10 in balancing. The length is a 7. It's fine. It's a good boss fight. Didn't drag on too long. Final Fantasy 16 boss fights are very long, but because they're so climactic and there's so much happening, it doesn't feel too long. It's a pretty good length. Reward. This boss fight has great reward. After you beat Odin, you get to use him and unlock his moveset, which is pretty neat. 8 out of 10 for the reward, which in total is a 71. So here we go. Our last fight of the night. Kuze from Yakuza 0. I'm gonna admit this boss fight does have some weaknesses, but it also has some great strength. And yeah, let me just get into it and explain. Moveset, it's a 5 out of 10. In the second boss fight, he has his pipe, and he basically just swings it around. Fairly generic moveset. Yeah. Narrative, that is what makes this fight so good. Yakuza 0 has an amazing story, and every boss fight with Kuze is just really placed really well in the game, in the story. And you didn't expect it to happen. You go into the sewers, right? You're just walking. All of a sudden, you see this maniac on his bike, bro. It was such an awesome moment. And the speech of Kuze before he fights you, oh my god. Phases. This boss fight doesn't really have phases. At the end, Kuze gets like a glow and gets stronger, if you can call that a phase. Otherwise, it's just one phase. You beat him up, which is why it gets a 5. You know, there's not really much to talk about here. And I'm giving it a 5 because he glows at the end. If you didn't do that, it would get a 0 because you can't grade phases if there aren't any. But this one, at least when he's low health, he switches it up a bit. He switches it up a bit. Cinematics, it's a 9 out of 10 because it's Yakuza, of course. Yakuza has some of the best QTEs, especially in the boss fights. I love it. 9 out of 10. Music, I think I'm sensing I'm sensing something here, okay? Every boss fight here has a 10 in music. I think music is just something really important for me. Something, I don't know, it changes my opinion on things a lot if there's good music involved. So here, of course, it's another banger. Oath of Enma, or what's it called? Fucking crazy. Especially combined with his speech. Oh my god. 10 out of 10. Uniqueness, it's 6 out of 10 because you're fighting in a sewer. That's pretty neat, and you don't have access to any of the objects that you usually do. If you're familiar with Yakuza, you can pick up things laying around on the street or something and beat enemies up with that, but since you're in a sewer, there isn't anything to pick up. So you have to fight up front, which most of the time you do have some stuff laying around that you can use, which makes this boss fight pretty unique in terms of Yakuza fights. Balancing, I think it's a 7. It's pretty tough if you play it on the hardest difficulty, but of course you can cheese it. If you're familiar with Yakuza combat, you can cheese almost any boss fight. But yeah, 7 out of 10, it's pretty decent. Length is a weakness. This boss fight is pretty short. He has 2 health bars and that's it. And you get through the fight fairly quickly in a span of 10 minutes or so, if that. So yeah, 3 out of 10 in that regard. Reward, it's a 7 out of 10 because every boss fight with Kuze is so damn satisfying. You don't even need any reward for it in terms of items or money. The satisfaction you get from fighting him is just enough, and it's good. I fucking loved every Kuze fight because of that. You want to beat him, you know? He has such a punchable face. Just thinking about him is like, oh, okay, let's go, Kuze. He has a very punchable face, but as you get on through the story, you respect him more and more. I love him. He's an awesome character. But in total, that is a 62 for Kuze. So our winner is amazing. Odin won with 71 points. Odin won. He is the best boss fight in all of gaming, and you can't fight me on this objective list. No, I'm kidding. Let me know what you thought of this video. Let me know your thoughts and your favorite boss fights in the comments. And yeah, I hope I entertained you with this. If you could leave a sub or a like, I would really appreciate it. And thank you for watching, guys.